It was intentionally called a drug price negotiation program, knowing full well that there's no negotiation involved in it, because they simply don't care about the long-term policy impacts. They care about the short-term political impacts. Government passed this law. It's part of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. There's not really any negotiation involved. And I'll explain when there is negotiation, but it's not real negotiation. At the outset, this is just a unilateral, non-negotiable price control mechanism. And what it does, it basically says, it looks at some of the most important drugs that are available today to patients in the United States, measured by, in fact, how much the government is spending on them in the collective, and we'll get back to that in a minute. But of course, that shows you that a lot of patients are actually using them in most cases. And what it does, it says if you've been on the market for 9 years in the case of small molecules and 13 in the case of large molecules or biologics, we are going to take that, we're going to look at what the current price is in the private insurance market, and we're going to start, before you even come to the table, with an automatic mandatory price cut of between 25 and 60%. So 25% off the private market price if the drug has been on the market for 12 years or less without facing generic competition at that point in time. And if it's been on the market without generic competition for 16 years or more, it's a 60% price cut before you do anything else. So let's make a simple example. If a drug costs $100, for the private market, as soon as you are eligible for and selected for this program, suddenly they're going to pay you a maximum of $75 if you're a young drug, or $40 if you are an older drug. So that's
I'm laughing
point one,
here
but go ahead.
because you said when you're selected for this program, like it's an honor. Like this is like the Heisman Trophy goes to Novartis.
Well, that's actually the backwards thinking here, because you are selected based on the fact that in many cases, let me give you a real example, because we are one of the first 10 drugs to be selected. One of our drugs is called Entresto. It's a heart failure drug. It's a great example of what this program is really about, which most Americans don't understand. There is nowhere in this act that actually looks at the drugs that are supposedly overpriced or supposedly not reflecting value for money. What they're looking at is one thing and one thing alone, which is what drugs have the overall highest spend for the system. So Entresto is a drug that is one of the, I think in some cases, the standard of care for heart failure. Well, who has heart failure? Most patients who have heart failure are the elderly. So the volume of patients on this drug, regardless of its cost, and no one looks at whether this is fairly priced already, that doesn't matter. The question is, what is the overall spend to the healthcare system? And if we're spending a lot on a drug, even if it's dirt cheap, if it's the overall hit to the system that's expensive, it is going to be selected, because that is the only criteria for selecting a drug. Then you get your automatic 25 to 60% price cut, and only after that does the so-called negotiation happen. But from there, it can only go one way, down, because those 25 to 60% is kind of the mandatory ceiling price. And it goes down counterintuitively based on all the things you'd think would actually keep it even at that first price. So for example, if you have patent protection left on your drug and it's selected for the program, you get your 25 to 60% price cut, and the existence of patents will force the price further down because it's counted against you. Same for whether you got any federal funding, whether you've already recouped your R&D costs. All these things actually work against you. Two other quick points about it. Number one, it's totally non-appealable. There's nothing here that you can appeal. You can't appeal the fact that you're declared eligible. You can't appeal the fact that you're selected, and you can't appeal the final price that CMS or Medicare sets for you, even if it's erroneous or even arbitrary. There's no way to appeal. And then if you choose here's the alternative. People say, well, why don't you just not do it? Well, if you don't do it, you face the so-called excise tax, which is really just a penalty that starts at, I think, 187% of your national sales, and quickly at day 270 goes to 1,900%. So I'll just end with one quick example here. The drug I mentioned, Entresto, if we were to decline the government's price, we would be facing roughly a $45 billion fine in the first year for not giving the government the price it demands. And the only other way out of this whole thing is to pull all of your products out of Medicare entirely. So basically, tell 157 million Americans, we're taking away all the drugs that we sell. We have to withdraw entirely from Medicare, which of course is totally unethical, totally infeasible. So more reasons why this is just not negotiation.